Hey, how's it going there, folks? Welcome back here to the weekend, Saturday, about 11:37 a.m. here, California time, June 29th, 2024. Latest activity here on the Earthquake 3D globe shows a 3.0 down here around the South Africa area. There in the red flag. Did see some larger movement overnight down here across the Peru area once again with a 6.1 coming in, that same area that got hit by the 7.2 here in the last day or so. There's that 7.2 that stirred up 2 days ago, already 2 days ago, but that was late on the day. So a little bit of aftershock activity occurring up here in the larger range, which is expected following a large 7-pointer. Possible we could see even a couple more 6s out here in terms of aftershock activity in this region. Still getting a little bit of migration further south, though, along the Peru-Chile Trench with a 5.2. That earthquake coming in last night in the Chile area. Either way, it definitely looks like things are remaining active here with a southward migration of the earthquake activity leading down into the Chile region from the north. So we'll continue to watch that potentially here for some further movement. Also down in the Gulf of that's the Baja California area. Looks like they're having a decent swarm of earthquake activity in this area. Quite a few 2s. I did have some 3s last night in this area. I did mention to watch for some adjustment to take place up here further along the plate boundary where it's expected to transfer in terms of pressure transfer. Far as anything kicking off overnight, we did see a 3-pointer, 3.5 to be exact here, north of the area that I mentioned that was seeing the swarming here in Southern California in the this little bend area. Very interesting geological feature out here. The Garlock Fault Shear Zone is a pretty much like a spring, so to speak, in terms of the relationship of the movement between the two plates out here, the Pacific and the North American plate. This has a lot of potential out here, I feel, in terms of producing larger activity. But we did see a 3.5 here just after midnight, 2 kilometers deep. Looks like it's on one of these fracture zones out here north of the Barstow region. I'm sure a few folks that may have been up that night or late last night may have felt this earthquake out there, mainly around the Barstow area of Southern California. Let me back out here and see what else we got in terms of anything larger. That looks like the only thing above 2.5. We are seeing a little bit of small microquake activity up and down the typical zones. No increasing movement here across the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault for now, but with this increasing activity overall in the region, we need to keep an eye on that. Also over here around the Fish Lake Valley Fault, got a 2.0 coming in here in the last hour. Into the region around the Bay Area, one earthquake right smack dab on the San Andreas Fault, 5 kilometers west-northwest of the San Francisco Zoo. Again, that's right there on the San Andreas Fault for a 1.2. Nothing big. Handful of smaller quakes out here as well across the Calaveras Fault Zone. And the looks like the creeping section there of the San Andreas Fault. The rest of Northern California, aside from the Clear Lake volcanic field here, with the hydrothermal operations there in full swing, really not looking at too much movement. These actually, it looks like we had one more here late last night, early this morning on 1.6, 28 kilometers deep here into the southern end of the Cascadia subduction zone. So we're getting a little bit of further movement there in that area. We'll check out Tremor a little bit later tonight once it becomes available. The rest of the country out here, nothing showing up here in Yellowstone. It is a weekend, so a lot of times these smaller quakes will be, they may happen. There may be some smaller quake activity out here, but the USGS normally doesn't get to them. They don't add them to the earthquake catalog here until Monday morning. So I do like to check the raw seismograph stations here to see what we have. Specifically, that reading right here is going to be the 6-pointer in the Peru area down here in South America. Remember that 6.1 earthquake striking around just after midnight. That did show up somewhat nicely here across the Yellowstone area. Yes, thousands of miles away, but these earthquake signals can pop up In fact, if we go back here to where the 7-pointer struck, we could just barely, well, it's split here between the UTC day, but this was that 7-pointer, 7.2 that struck down the Peru a couple days ago. As far as current activity goes, current earthquake movement, doesn't look like we're seeing anything of any type of movement whatsoever out here across Yellowstone. The wind doesn't even look to be a factor out here on the seismograph stations here today either, so things look fairly quiet out here across the supervolcano up there in Wyoming. Had that one earthquake here last night in the Lake Ontario area, New York State region. Doesn't look like we've seen any further aftershock activity out here for now. New Madrid seismic zone, pretty quiet. Handful of smaller quakes there in the typical regions of the oil fields. All right, out here in Hawaii, see what we got going on here, because this has been an area of interest, and it still looks like we're seeing quite a bit of earthquake activity out here, just specifically in this region. Let me go over here to the latest volcano hazards map here. We'll get a little bit more data in terms of what's going on here below the surface for Kilauea Volcano, which, by the way, still sitting at a yellow and advisory. Not for sure how much longer it's going to be able to sustain that level. The deformation data here, the ground movement, shows that we're doing a little something different here. It does look like we're leveling off, so I don't know if we're at a point of maximum pressurization here or not. Could be. It's definitely a little bit different than the stair-stepping ladder event that we've seen here since the last eruption there earlier this month. Very short-lived eruption on the Southwest Rift Zone. So we're leveling off here, maybe even going down a little bit. That could be a sign here that it could be with the earthquake activity up here continuing, but with inflation leveling off. That tells me right here, I think that we're getting at a point of maximum pressurization before we see either a fissure event take place up here, eruptive fissure event across, I believe it's going to be specifically around this area, or we could see a weaker area down below, see a magma intrusion somewhere, whether it's off to the Southwest Rift Zone here or maybe off to the East Rift Zone. So we're at we're with that deformation data leveling off like that. That's a sign right here that we're getting to a point of something about ready to take place here. So we got to watch that. As far as the latest updated information goes, let's see what they have to say. The volcano is currently not erupting, and the summit earthquake counts have increased as part of a seismic swarm that began back on the 27th. But technically, I mean, it's gone on prior to that. It's not like it just popped up out of the blue. We've seen an increase in the rates of earthquakes around the June 27th. But let's see here. Moderately elevated behavior that has persisted since the end of June. That's June 3rd. So we've seen the ground deformation rise and now level off. And that eruption back there on June 3rd really did nothing in terms of relieving the stress below the area. Any substantial increases in seismicity and or deformation could result in a new eruptive episode within or near the summit region, but there are no signs of an imminent eruption at this time. The key to watch is earthquake activity, and it's in one area, and it has been here. So watch this area pretty closely. Remember, there's a couple things that could happen here. We could see this eruptive event take place here, or we could see a magma intrusion away from the area somewhere, which would temporarily relieve the strain up here across this area that's going on right now. New Zealand, see what's going on down there. Any major activity going on across New Zealand? Looks like a little bit of swarming going on there underneath North Island. Got to watch the Hikurangi subduction zone, right? I don't want to jinx it. I know if we start talking about something, start thinking about something strong enough and long enough, then we make things happen. It's it's kind of a weird deal, but you create your own reality, so to speak, around you. And I really don't want to jinx this area, but they've been seeing a lot of earthquake activity out here recently. North Island area, a lot of deeper movement, with all the activity here recently, let me pull this up and show you guys around this area. It's definitely working its way down south. Now, the USGS is not really showing any larger quakes here in this area. It's been a lot of 3s, a lot of 2s. They even had a 4-pointer out here a couple days ago. Upper area of the Hikurangi subduction zone surface quake. But this area right here is very capable of producing a large damaging mega quake out here, and of course a subsequent tsunami. It's been quite a while since the Hikurangi subduction zone has had any significant movement out here. But it's capable of it. And history has shown us that this area is prone to some very large damaging earthquakes. So keep an eye on what's going on here. Notice a pattern of increasing activity here across North Island recently. Let's pull up the... Let's see if I can find my GeoNet. I need to make a bookmark here for the GeoNet servers. It's, you know, every single one of my links out here is just space weather related, geology and whatnot. And yeah, sometimes I get lost in all this stuff. Not even joking. Let's see if I can bring that up. Stand by here for a second. All right, here we go. I'll make a bookmark. I promise. 3.4 South Island, working its way down south here across the plate boundary a little bit. 6 hours ago, 3.1 North Island. That's 25 kilometers deep there. It seems like it's going on specifically right around this area of North Island. 3.9. There's that 4-pointer. That's a little odd there. I could understand if they had a 5-pointer and then followed up by, you know, a couple 3s and maybe a couple 4s, but the consistency of these magnitudes here to one another is a little concerning, because that's normally a sign of some foreshock activity. So we got to watch that. Definitely got to watch the area. It looks like centered around the North Island area right now is where that swarming activity is taking place. Man, and it's kicking up here. Like I said, there wasn't really any main quake followed up by a series of aftershocks. It's just a bunch of earthquakes, all roughly around the same magnitude. So keep an eye here. North Island, New Zealand, definitely looking hot in terms of the earthquake activity right now. All right, further out and about here, see what we got across the Western Pacific. It looks a little bit quieter up here today. We'll get rid of Hawaii. A little movement up here in Alaska. I did see a 5-pointer up here, northern edge. This area has been rocking a little bit over the last week, and we chatted about that this area sees at least 2 6-pointers in any given year along this region here. I believe that was the deal. We can even, well, I'm not going to double check it because I know that they should be getting a 6-pointer here pretty soon in this area. And all these little earthquakes and the uptick in elevated movement out here could be a sign that we could be seeing a 6-pointer or so here soon. This area specifically. A lot of deeper activity. This latest one, a 5-pointer, about 100 kilometers deep here. That's a major subduction zone here. If you look on the map, this area, the North American and Pacific Plate interaction here, major subduction zone. And again, high slip rate across this area. Further as you go to the west here across that plate boundary. So keep an eye on this area of the Aleutian Trench. It is showing some elevated activity here over the last week. This 4.7 coming in late last night. Older activity out here, it looks like today, across the rest of the region. Not really seeing that typical swarm pattern that we see out here in the Philippines southward, Indonesia Islands area. Yes, we're still seeing earthquake activity, but it's not a huge cluster like we would normally see on any given day out here. So, but there is some newer activity, so it may just be ramping back up. Looks like maybe as of an hour ago we're starting to get that that going on. But prior to this activity, it was awfully quiet out here. All right, the rest of the world here, a lot of older quakes on the map. One new earthquake down into the, that's actually well east of the South Sandwich Trench here. That's on the, well, that's a divergent boundary activity out here. It does look like maybe we're getting some increasing strain way north of this quake. So notice these arrows down here where the separation of the plates take place, right? This is over time, not immediately. If that were to happen immediately, yeah, we would have some catastrophic global negative consequences for sure. But this morning's earthquake looks like it's occurring right about here, the divergent zone activity. And if you look at the arrows here, this is where the general stress and strain of that movement's going to take place. And it's right up here in the Africa region. And, you know, wouldn't you know it, 5.6, and now we're getting some newer activity up north in that zone that would make sense where we're seeing the activity right now, where pressure would take place. 3.0 out there right now. So active, definitely active. Many areas to keep an eye on here today. Definitely in a state of uptick right now in terms of earthquake activity. Space weather activity, well, I wish I could say that we're getting another aurora event out here, but we're not. Nothing really expected. That was just an unusual type of event here. They weren't forecasting that, and in fact, the space weather models were showing just barely a glancing hit from that weak CME, but everything was caught off guard, so to speak. Our magnetic field, I guess, was just at a state of relaxation, and it definitely got hit pretty hard there with a KP index up almost to 8, a G4 class storm. Pretty intense. But right now, doesn't look like we're seeing that as far as any specific activity right now. There's not a whole lot of auroras taking place. The forecast itself here calls for very minimal conditions unless we get maybe some type of other unusual event, but I don't think we've seen anything blast off here from the sun that would create anything here in the next day or so. As far as flaring activity goes, well, it's clustered, complete cluster out here of sunspots, but you could have a million of these sunspots all over the place here on the sun, and they wouldn't really be doing anything unless you have complexity. Intermixing here of the magnetic structure of the cores would create these special sparks, so to speak, to produce a flare or two, but everything looks fairly stable out here right now. Even this region out here on the northeastern limb, I was kind of hoping for something of a more magnetically complex structure with that sunspot, but it's not. Doesn't look like it's happening, at least not yet. This sunspot right here may be getting a little bit more complex, but that's going to be out of sight, out of mind here by tonight probably, and we are left with a whole lot of disorganized sunspots, and there's many of them. Like I say, you could have 100 of them out here, but if they're not magnetically complex, well, we get low flare threats. Right now, 99% chance for a C flare, 30% for M flare, X flare around 5%. I doubt that, but it is what it is, right? There was a let's see here, a filament located in the southern hemisphere lifted off the sun beginning around so-and-so. That was a CME, but notice how that was facing towards the south here. You can kind of see that. Beautiful, beautiful filament. Those things can sit on the sun or above the sun here for a little bit and just all of a sudden blast off, creating huge clouds of plasma. But it doesn't look like that is Earth directed whatsoever, pointing down towards the south here of the Earth-Sun plane. Had that been a little bit more centered, yeah, we could probably see a nice geomagnetic storm here in a couple days. All right, let's see what we got here. We're looking at some tropical activity stirring up out here in the Atlantic. This is going to be one to watch here. We got, this is in Spanish here. Hold on a second. But we're looking at Tropical Storm Beryl. Let's go back here to the National Hurricane Center. I really don't want to test out my Spanish here on the live stream. I mean, I grew up here in California. I know a little bit. Definitely had lots of friends growing up. Still do. Of Hispanic descent, and I just don't want to test out my Spanish on here. So, what do we got here? Beryl is expected to become a dangerous major hurricane before reaching the Windward Islands area. Okay, now here's the warnings and the cone. This is the path that is projected here of soon-to-be Hurricane Beryl. And looks like Jamaica's right there in the firing line. And from there, we got to watch it. It could hit into the Gulf and continue to strengthen. I was checking out the data here. Let me see where that's at. Right here. Now, this is the coast of South America down here. This is Beryl in the developing stage. Now, we're going to put this into motion here and watch the strengthening that it goes through. And there's another tropical development behind it as well, starting to catch up. We'll have to watch. But that goes right into the Caribbean, almost, well, in between Jamaica area. And then it's going to be a rough one to figure out exactly where this is going to go. The winds, the pressure, and whatnot is going to be the main ingredients to watch in terms of where this is going to be steered off to. It could head right in here into the Gulf, or it could take maybe a northward direction. Either way, this is going to be something to watch pretty closely as Tropical Storm Beryl here. I believe that's right, Beryl. That's the only way I can pronounce that. Or Beryl. No, that wouldn't be right. Tropical Storm Beryl. Okay. Watch this pretty closely here. Major hurricane is expected rapidly. It's going to strengthen very rapidly in this little period right here. But we'll have to watch it as it comes into the towards the Gulf of Mexico. And one of the weather models here, the GFS model, if we look at it, let's go over here to the North Atlantic. I guess that'll work. States over here, massive high pressure, steering that stuff over that way as far as the tropical development goes. We'll watch down here with these systems as they rapidly develop into a major hurricane there. Again, Beryl right here, another tropical system behind it. Hard to say exactly what's going to happen. This one has more of a southward and then a northward turn, leading it right into Mexico once again, where they've been getting a lot of rain from all these tropical storms that have been hitting them. But this is a ways out, folks. It all depends on location of all of these different high and low pressure systems and the winds and whatnot. So we'll watch that as we get a little bit closer to that. Hot temperatures out here in the West Coast. I think everyone's heard about it. We're definitely going to be getting some temperatures above 110. I think we got at least a week's worth of 110 or higher in the California area. And that's no joke. Those are not the feels like temperature. That's going to be the actual air temperature, 110. Now, I'm hoping for a dry wind. That way, you know, it'll get rid of some of this rice field moisture that's out here in Northern California, because it can get hot and sticky out here in Northern California. I've been down to the Gulf States many, many times. I know what the humidity feels like and the dew points. But when you have water all throughout these hundreds of thousands of acres of land, of rice fields, it creates a mini environment, a mini climate down here, similar to the Gulf Coast states in Northern California here in the Sacramento Valley. I live here. I've lived here the majority of my life. I'm hoping to get out of here soon. But yeah, it's going to be hot. 110 and above. I think our hottest day is going to be, I think we're calling for 115 air temperature sometime next week. So it's going to be hot 4th of July. Goodness. We're underneath the red flag warning as well. So, you know, these fires are going to, hopefully no fires start, but it's going to be a bad time for 4th of July, right? Red flag, people lighting off fireworks, and I'm sure illegal fireworks, unfortunately. But it's going to be hot. All right. I think that's about it. Let me check the asteroids out here. I know we haven't checked them in a while. I do like to keep an eye on them. It's probably important that we do. June 29th today, 460-foot asteroid. That's a pretty decent approach right there. 184,000 miles distance, and that is it's a pretty big one, but still safe. That's still actually a decent amount. Hold on. Go down here and check. So yeah, this asteroid today is actually coming within 0.8 lunar distances here. So within the distance of the Earth and the Moon. Coming in fairly hot, 9.4 kms a second. Goodness. And diameter 148 meters. 460 feet. That's a big one. But I think we're safe. 200 feet. That's coming up today as well. And these next couple approaches here from these other asteroids look fairly distant. I may pull up 2024 MK and see what the orbital viewer looks like. I don't like using this specific one here. There's a better one that is easier to use and add multiple different layers onto it to get a better perspective of where that asteroid is headed. Wasn't really planning on that, but I may cover that sometime this afternoon. It may have even already passed us. I don't know. But anyway, we'll see you guys back here a little bit later on this evening, unless something major happens. I think I'm gonna jump in the pool here today and just relax a little bit. It's supposed to be hot again. Of course, there's really no cool days here in Northern California in the summertime, that's for sure. Unless you're along the coast. If you're along the coast, and obviously temperatures, can stay quite pleasant out there. But I'm here in the Sacramento Valley of Northern California, outside of Chico, and it's pretty much a mini Death Valley, surrounded by mountains here. To our west and east, and if you're up in Redding, you guys, they really cook up here as well. Sometimes Redding gets much hotter than the rest of the valley. All right, take care, folks. Have a good one. Keep an eye on the sky. Keep an eye on the plates, and we'll catch you guys back out here a little bit later on this evening. Take care. Stay safe.